The name Titanic evokes a sense of grandeur, tragedy, and a story that has captivated the world for over a century. But how did this unsinkable ship meet its tragic end on its maiden voyage? Today, we're diving deep into the history of the RMS Titanic, from its ambitious conception to its final, chilling moments. It all began in the early 1900s, a golden age of transatlantic travel. The competition between rival shipping lines was fierce, particularly between Britain's Cunard Line and the White Star Line. Cunard had just launched two new marvels, the Lusitania and the Mauretania, which were breaking speed records. To compete, J. Bruce Ismay, the chairman of White Star Line, and Lord Purry, a partner at the Harland and Wolff shipyard in Belfast, envisioned something different. Instead of focusing solely on speed, they would build a new class of ships that would be the largest and most luxurious the world had ever seen. This was the birth of the Olympic-class liners. The Olympic, the Titanic, and the Britannic. Construction of the Titanic began on March 31st, 1909, at the Harland and Wolff shipyard. The scale of the project was immense. Over 3,000 workers toiled for 2 years to bring the colossal vessel to life. The ship was a floating palace, stretching 882 feet long and standing 11 stories high. It boasted features unheard of at the time: a heated swimming pool, a gymnasium, a squash court, Turkish baths, and lavishly decorated lounges and dining rooms for its first-class passengers. Even the third-class accommodations were considered superior to those on many other ships. A key feature of its design was its watertight compartments. The hull was divided into 16 compartments, and the ship could supposedly stay afloat even if 4 of them were flooded. This engineering marvel led the popular press and the public to declare the Titanic practically unsinkable. This phrase would later become a haunting echo of misplaced confidence. On May 31st, 1911, the massive hull of the Titanic was launched into the River Lagan in Belfast. But it was just a shell. It would take another 10 months of meticulous work to fit out the interior with all its machinery, fixtures, and opulent furnishings. Finally, after successful sea trials, the ship was ready for its maiden voyage. On April 10th, 1912, a sense of excitement and anticipation filled the air in Southampton, England. The RMS Titanic, under the command of the experienced Captain Edward Smith, was about to set sail for New York City. Passengers from all walks of life boarded the magnificent vessel. There were some of the wealthiest people in the world, like John Jacob Astor, Four and Benjamin Guggenheim, in the luxurious first-class suites. In second class, there were professionals, teachers, and authors. And in third class, or steerage, were hundreds of emigrants from across Europe. Dreaming of a new life in America, the first few days of the voyage were smooth and uneventful. Passengers enjoyed the ship's amenities, dining on exquisite food, strolling the spacious decks, and marveling at the sheer scale and luxury surrounding them. The ship was making good time, sailing across a calm, starlit Atlantic. But the calm was deceptive. Throughout the day on Sunday, April 14th, the Titanic's radio operators received multiple warnings of icebergs from other ships in the area. While these messages were passed to Captain Smith, they didn't seem to cause significant alarm. The belief in the ship's invincibility was strong, and the pressure to maintain speed for an early arrival in New York was likely a factor. That heavening the sea was eerily still, a condition known as a flat calm, which made spotting icebergs more difficult because there were no waves breaking at their base. At 11:40 p.m., a lookout named Frederick Fleet spotted a large iceberg directly in the ship's path. He rang the warning bell and telephoned the bridge, shouting, "Iceberg, right ahead." First Officer William Murdoch immediately ordered the engines to be reversed and the ship to be turned hard to port. But it was too late. The massive liner, moving at over 20 knots, couldn't turn quickly enough. Instead of a head-on collision, the Titanic scraped along the submerged part of the iceberg. The impact was described by survivors as a slight shudder, a jarring grind that most passengers barely noticed. But below the waterline, the damage was catastrophic. The iceberg had punched and buckled the steel plates along the ship's starboard side, reaching at least 5 of its watertight compartments. The unsinkable design was predicated on no more than 4 flooding. Water began pouring in. Thomas Andrews, the ship's designer who was aboard for the maiden voyage, quickly assessed the damage. His calculation was grim. He informed Captain Smith that the ship was doomed and would sink in a matter of hours. The horrifying reality began to set in. At 12:05 a.m. on April 15th, Captain Smith ordered the lifeboats to be uncovered and the passengers must. The distressed call CQD was sent out, soon followed by the new signal SOS. The order was given for women and children to be loaded into the lifeboats first. But here, the tragedy deepened. There were only 20 lifeboats on board, enough for just over half of the 2,200 people on the ship. This was technically compliant with the outdated British Board of Trade regulations, which were based on a ship's tonnage, not its passenger capacity. To make matters worse, in the initial confusion and panic, many lifeboats were launched partially empty. Some crew members feared the boats would buckle if fully loaded, while some passengers were reluctant to leave the seeming safety of the massive well-lit ship for a small boat in the freezing, dark ocean. As the bow of the Titanic sank deeper, the angle of the deck grew steeper. Panic began to escalate. The ship's band, led by Wallace Hartley, famously continued to play to calm the passengers, a poignant and heroic act in the face of certain death. The last of the lifeboats were launched, leaving over 1,500 people stranded on the sinking vessel. By 2:05 a.m., the last lifeboat was gone. The ship's bow was completely submerged, and the stern rose high into the air, exposing the propellers. The lights flickered and then went out for good, plunging the scene into darkness. Survivors in the lifeboats could hear the desperate cries of those left behind. The immense stress on the ship's structure became too much. With a deafening roar, the Titanic broke in two between the third and fourth funnels. The stern section settled back into the water for a moment before rising vertically once more, then slipping beneath the waves at 2:20 a.m. The entire sinking had taken just 2 hours and 40 minutes. In the freezing water, with a temperature of -2 degrees Celsius, survival was nearly impossible. Most of those who went into the water succumbed to hypothermia within minutes. The cries for help slowly faded into a haunting silence. Of Timore, than 1,500 people left on the ship or in the water, only a handful would be pulled into lifeboats. The nearest ship to respond to the distress calls was the RMS Carpathia, which had been steaming at full speed through the dangerous ice field. It arrived on the scene at around 4 a.m., over an hour and a half after the Titanic had disappeared. Over the next few hours, the crew of the Carpathia rescued the 705 survivors from the lifeboats. The news of the disaster sent shockwaves around the world. The public was stunned that such a technologically advanced ship, loaded as the pinnacle of safety, could sink on its very first voyage with such a massive loss of life. Inquiries were held in both the United States and Britain. The investigations led to major reforms in maritime safety, including the establishment of the International Ice Patrol to monitor icebergs in the North Atlantic and new regulations, requiring that all ships carry enough lifeboats for everyone on board, and that lifeboat drills be regularly practiced. For 73 years, the Titanic lay undisturbed in its final resting place, 2.5 miles beneath the surface of the Atlantic. Its location was a mystery until 1985, when a joint French-American expedition led by Dr. Robert Ballard finally discovered the wreck. The images of the ghostly ship, sitting upright on the ocean floor, brought the story back into the public consciousness in a powerful new way. The story of the Titanic is more than just a shipwreck. It's a complex tale of ambition, class division, human error, and heroism. It is a stark reminder of the dangers of hubris and a timeless lesson about our relationship with technology. Even today, over a century later, the epic and tragic story of the Ship of Dreams continues to fascinate and move us all. Thank you for watching. If you found this journey into the past interesting, please hit that like button and subscribe for more deep dives into history's most compelling stories. See you next time.